Okay. We're getting closer to the end here. Okay, so here we go. Today's daf. It's Masechta Sanhedrin. 2 more days. The last day we're learning is Wednesday, when we wrap up Be'ezus Hashem Masechta Sanhedrin. Interesting, continuing with interesting topics over here. So first of all, the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, we left off that Rabbi Akiva was a person that usually wanted to bring more people into Olam Haba. And yet, when it came to the Aseres HaShvatim, Rabbi Akiva said they're not going to Olam Haba. And then he also said over here by the Dar HaMidbar, Rabbi Akiva said they're never coming back. They're not coming to Olam Haba. That means they're not getting up Tchias HaMesim. So everybody was saying Rabbi Akiva has a Chasidus, a piousness, that he always finds a way to get people back in Olam Haba, and yet he went strict on those two issues. So my Chassidus say, where do we find that Rabbi Akiva was lenient when it comes to people coming to Olam Haba? The Tanya we learned in a Brisa. Kitana b'nei Risha Yisrael. Let's say you have a Russia, a capo in a concentration camp, a collaborator, and so he doesn't get Olam Haba. What about his young child? So according to the first opinion, which is Rabbi Gamliel, even his children are not going to get up Tchias HaMesim. Shenema, even though they have really nothing to blame, it's their father that was evil. Shenema, kini ayoim ba boyer katano v'hoya kol zaydim. God says it's going to burn like a furnace. All the arrogant people, all the people that did bad things, kash, they're going to be like straw. They're going to be consumed. No root or branch will be left of these Rishoyim. That means that they're not going to have a root in this world. And anaf la'olam haba means that their children are not going to come to olam haba. That's the opinion of the way Rabbi Gamliel interprets it. Divrei Rabbi Gamliel. Kiva oimer boyin heim la'olam haba. They are going to come to olam haba. Shenema shoyme pesoyim Hashem shekain karim b'krachayam linuka pasya. God watches over somebody who is a pesi, young kid, who it's not his fault that his father was a Russia. So Rabbi Kiva says a Russia's son will come to Olam Haba. V'oimer gudi v'iloni v'chabuli b'ram ikesh rashi ba'ar shaviki. So the Gemara asks, "V'laman makayim liyazir lehem sharish v'anav." What does Rabbi Kiva do with that pasuk? Shelo yiniach lehem le'mitzvah le'shiura mitzvah. A Risha Yisrael, God will not leave for them any reward in the next world. Not a mitzvah, not the crumbs of a mitzvah. They're all going to be paid up in this world. Davar acha sharizu neshama, ba'anav zu guf. That means they're not going to have their. That means they're not going to have their. They're not going to. They're not going to have their guf. Aval now, but ketane b'nei Risha umas ha'olam, the young kids of a Russia of the umas ha'olam, right? So his father was a Nazi, so he had a kid. What about that kid? Will he come to Olam Haba? Divrei Hakol ein bo Olam Haba. Everybody agrees they're never coming to Olam Haba. Rabbi Gamliel nafkalim ta'abed kol zecher lama. He learns that idea from another pasuk, but ta'abed kol zecher lama, and you don't even have to go. They learn it from a pasuk, but ta'abed kol zecher lama. All remembrance of a rush of Imei Olam will not be around in Olam Haba. Now we're going to come to a nice, interesting topic. Let's say you have to earn your pay to get up to Tchias HaMesim, right? You have to, pay the price. So how old do you have to die when you're going to you can be merit Tchias HaMesim? The Gemara is asking, Itma Kotan me'emas bo Olam Haba. When does a young kid get if he dies as a kid? When do we know for sure that he goes to Olam Haba? Rabbi, it's a machlokes. If he was born and then died, he's going to get up Tchias HaMesim. Not so fast. One says not so fast. If he was already old enough that he had language and he could talk, then he died, then he comes back. Then he could come for Tchias HaMesim. The one that says from the time that he was born, so he brings a pasuk. Only if he can talk, then he comes back. So we have two opinions. You have to be either old enough to be born, obviously, or you have to be, let's say, a 1-year-old to be able, or 2-year-old to be able to talk. Then you get Olam Haba. Itmar, we learned Ravina Alma Mashosh in Israel. Even a miscarriage, as soon as it was conceived in the mother's stomach, that kid goes to Olam Haba. Ksiv Zera, even if it was just a seed, Yavdenu will serve me. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar, he says, not in between, not when it was born. Misha Ashenimal, as soon as it gets a bris milah. If it gets a bris milah, then it'll come back. Shnei Ksiv ani v'gavea menoyin asasi eimecha afuna. So he says that as soon as it carries the Yiras Shamayim, like a wheel, that means it's always on him, the Yiras Shamayim, which refers to the Milah, then he will merit to get up for Olam Haba. From this, I think the inyan is that when a baby dies before the bris milah, somehow they give a bris milah and then bury it because they want the baby to come back for Olam Haba. Tana, we learned in the Brayso Mishum Rav Meir. Rav Meir says the kid has to be old enough. Misha'a sheyomer amen. As soon as the child says amen, then and he's old enough to say amen, then he's destined for Olam Haba. Shnema pischali shav yavgad sadik shomer emunim. Al tikre shomer emunim elo shomer amen. You've divided up. Shomer amen. If the kid can say amen, then the gates of the future world are opened up for him. Now the Gemara, go to Daf Yud Aleph Amar Aleph. My amen. What does it mean, amen, that we say on every bracha? How does that explain that you're accepting the fear of heaven? What does the word amen mean? Rav Chanina says it's a abbreviation. Kel Melech Neman. It stands for Almighty God, the creator of the world, Melech, the guide of the world, the king that's doing what's best for me, and Neman means you could trust him that he's faithful, that you can trust him to pay back bad deeds and give reward on good deeds. Now the Gemara has just a machlokes in how to read a pasuk. And Reb Shlokish read it very severely, and Reb Yochanan said, don't read it so harsh. Here's a pasuk. Let the gates of Gehenna open up. The mouth of Gehenna open up, because there's nobody learning somebody missed out in performing one mitzvah. Amar Rosh Lakish says that's what it means. If you left out one edict of God, one of the Taryag mitzvahs, then you're destined for Gehenna. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, it's not respectful for you to say such a thing, that as soon as if somebody did not learn, did not keep, or left over one edict he didn't keep, so he's destined to go into Sha'al Gehenim. Ella, what it means is, afilu, the opposite. Afilu loy lamed ela choik echad. Even if he only learned all about one mitzvah. He learned one mitzvah. That's all his Torah learning. Then he gets Gan Eden, or he gets rewarded. But the Gehenim opens up for somebody, lebli chayk, layalenu, he never learned anything about any mitzvah. A similar machlokes on how to read a parsuk. Rish Lakish read it harshly, and Rabbi Yochanan read it more leniently. The pasuk says, in the future world, on all of planet Earth, Num Hashem, Pishnayim bo yikaresu, 2/3 will be wiped out, maybe a nuclear war, v'yigvo, v'shlishis yivasimo. A third will remain. Amar Rish Lakish says, Shlishi shel Shem, a third of Shem's children. That and the way it's, Shem, Noach had 3 children, and a third of his children was Shem, and then Shem had 3 children, a Pachshain, and a third of that, of those children, which is just a small part of the Jewish people, will survive. So according to Rish Lakish, only a small part of the Jewish nation will survive. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan, it's not pleasant for you to say something like that and read the pasuk that way. Ella, rather read it this way. A third of Noach will survive. That means from all the entire population, the 8 billion people, a third will survive. But amongst them, a lot of Jews are going to survive. So therefore, that's a lighter way to say how it's going to look in the future. The pasuk says, "Ki noichi be'alti eschem lekachti eschem." God says, "I'm going to overpower you and take you as a boss." Echad me'ir, one Jew from a city, ushnaim mishpacha, and two from a family. And that's like, that's how people came back after the Holocaust. One from a city and two from a family. Amr shlachish dvarim kiksavim. Read it the way it says. That there's going to be only one survivor from a city, or two from a family. A family doesn't mean just a family in the city, it's a family from many cities. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan says, please don't say that. Don't read the pasuk like this. Ella, read it rather this way. If there's one good man in a city, then he can save the entire city. If you have two good men in a family, they can save the entire family. Yosef Rav Kahana kamei de Rav. Rav Kahana was sitting in front of Rav. The Yosef and he sat and he said, Dvarim kiksovim. You have to read it the way it's written, that in the future, only one person from a city is going to survive and two from a family. And Rav, so basically he read it like Rish Lakish. Amalei Rav said, it's not nice for you to say that. One from a city will save the entire, is a merit for the entire city, and two from a family merits the entire family and will save them. So now the Gemara says something interesting. Rav observed his student, he was massaging his head. Apparently, maybe he was massaging his head to relax himself. V'salek, when he finished, the Yosef coming to Rav, then he came to the Shir. So he indulged himself in a certain relaxation. So Amalei, so Rav said, you're not coming into the future world. Amalei, so Rav Kahana said, Meilet kolayatli, are you cursing me? I'm not going to get up to the future world. Amalei, so Rav said, I'm repeating a pasuk. That's what the pasuk means. We don't. So again, if you read the pasuk literally, like Rav Kahana read it literally, then Rav Kahana is not coming to Olam Haba. But Rav said you can read it differently. That Torah is not found only by somebody who's mechaya, is not found by somebody who is constantly, relaxing his body, relaxing himself and indulging himself unnecessary. And that's what Rav wanted to say to hint to Rav Kahana, don't always read a pasuk literally. Now the Gemara discusses, very apropos, what happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim. Tanya Reb Simoy Oimet. Nema, the pasuk says, God said to Moshe, "V'lakachti eschem lilam." I'm taking these people for me as a people. V'nema v'veisi eschem, and I'm going to bring them to Eretz Yisrael. So here the Gemara is going to say a fascinating thing. How many Jews in Egypt left Egypt? You're going to be surprised at the number. When they left Mitzrayim, it's juxtaposed to when they came to Eretz Yisrael. When they came to Eretz Yisrael, only two went to Eretz Yisrael from the 600,000. Kalev and Yeshua. The rest of them died out. When they left Mitzrayim, only 2 out of 600,000 left Mitzrayim. In other words, there were millions and millions of Jews. And from all those, only for every 600,000, only 2 Jews left Mitzrayim. In the Moshe Mashiach, it's also going to be that way. It's going to happen in the future, in the days of Mashiach, there's going to be very minimal Jews surviving throughout the ages. 2 from 600,000. Tanya Amr Abloza B'Rab Yosi. Rabbi Elazar ben Yosi taught us. I took a trip to Alexandria of Egypt. There was a nice Jewish community there. And I found an old Egyptian. And he said, let me show you what my father did to your fathers in the land of Egypt. Mehem, some kids, they drowned in the water. Mehem, some of them, hargu b'charav, they killed with a sword. Mehem, some of them got stuffed into the wall as they were building it. And he was showing him that in the wall is a human body in these walls. Moshe Rabbeinu could not fathom how God could allow such a thing, that they're taking live children and using them as bricks. Shinema, Moshe Rabbeinu came to God and says, Mosi al Pare, as soon as I came to Pare to talk in your name, you made it worse from the people. So God, he was like so emotionally disturbed by that. You don't get it. Woe is those that are lost and not forgotten. I mean, I compare you to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and you don't even come close. All right, come on, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Bekel Shaddai, Al Midasai, Amrali, Mashimcha. Many times I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I told them that I had the potential to do something, and I promised them, and they didn't ask, "What's your name?" In other words, prove it. Let it see it happen. They believed it. I told Avram Avinu, this land is your land. Walk around it length and breadth to the width, and it's yours. But then, when Avram wanted to bury Sarai, he couldn't even find a plot of land. He had to give away all his wealth to buy a little piece of a burial plot for Sarah. He didn't question the way I conduct the world. I said to Yitzchak, live here and I'm going to bless you. His servants were looking for water to drink. They couldn't find anything until they made they had a quarrel, a lawsuit. So every time that Yitzchak wanted to do something on the land, they always sued him, and he got into fights with the local people, even though God promised him the land. And they didn't second guess the way I conduct the world, says Hashem. I spoke to Yaakov. I said, the land that you're lying down on is yours. He wanted to buy a piece of real estate to put his tent, and he couldn't find, nobody selling him. He had to pay out an exorbitant price of 100 kasita. God continues talking to Moshe. Look at Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. I promised them, and then they didn't see it come true, and they didn't ask, "What's your name?" That is going to guarantee that what you promised is going to come true. But you, Moshe Rabbeinu, say to me, "Ma Shimcha," right away. Right away when we met for the first time, you asked me what's my name. And now you're telling me, and now you're telling me that you're faulting me. I'm not saving the people right away. I made it even worse. So you never know why God makes things worse before it gets better. So Moshe Rabbeinu got punished, and it says, "Ata sira ashasa l'para." You're going to see what I'm going to do to Pare. You, Moshe Rabbeinu, will see the war against Pare. You'll see the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim. But you're not going to see the Jews win over the 31 kings to take over Eretz Israel. So that's it. It says Moshe quickly bowed down, got on his knees and bowed down, bent and bowed down. Mara Moshe. What did Moshe see in God that he bowed down? This was by the Egel. He saw that God has a midah that he doesn't punish right away. He extends the anger. Rabbanim says, Emes Ra. He got nervous, so he needed to beg God to forgive the Jewish people because he saw the midah that God has is emes. True, whatever you do wrong, you got to pay it back. There's a price to pay for every action. So either he bowed because he was pleased, or he bowed because he was nervous of what God could potentially do. Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, command the Omer Erech HaPaibra, that Moshe Rabbeinu saw that God has the midah of not punishing right away. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Moshe went to the heavens and saw God, God's writing about himself, that I have an extended anger. You should extend your anger only if it's tzaddik. If a generally good guy makes an error, does an avera, you extend your anger. God said, to even the worst person in the world, I don't punish them right away. I'm very patient. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Rishoyim, if the evil people, Yavedu, they should be lost. Punish them right away. Amalei. So God says back to Moshe, Hashte chazas mighty bebayalach. You will see what you're requesting from me, that's not the right thing to do. Kishachati Yisrael, when the Jews sinned with the egel, Amalei, so Aloi kach amartli erchapayim letzadikim, Amalei. So Moshe Rabbeinu, so God said to Moshe, I gotta punish the Jews right now, because didn't you tell me that I should only have erchapayim, extend the anger only for righteous people? But the Jews, they purposely did the chet egel, so they're Rishoyim. So I should really punish them right away. That's what God wanted to do. We go to Amid Beis. Amar Lafanov. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Rabbeinu Shloim, Master of the world. But you told me after Rishoyim that you have an extended anger. You extend your anger even for evil people. I knew the ksiv. That's why it says in the pasuk, "V'ati yigna koyach Hashem kashi dibartu leima." Moshe Rabbeinu said we should increase the power of chesed of Hashem, like he spoke, that God is an erech apayim, extends his anger and doesn't punish right away, even if for the most evil person. So Moshe Rabbeinu used that argument. Says the Gemara. So Moshe Rabbeinu was so proud to see that God has erech apayim. Rav Chavga Havasolek was also B'darga de Bei Rebbe B'Shela. Rav Chavga was going up the steps of the yeshiva of Rabbi Bar Shela. Shamelahu Yunuka. He heard a child from the Cheder who's just learned the pasuk. Your promises are faithful. Leveis Chanav Kodesh, that you're going to build the base of Migdash. Hashem, it may take a long time, but it's going to happen. And who wrote this prayer was Moshe Rabbeinu. So L'Oirech Yomim, right? Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos is Lim Moshe. So L'Oirech Yomim, we darshan that Moshe Rabbeinu saw that God has plenty of time. He doesn't need to punish right away. It doesn't need to punish right away, and that's what Moshe was most excited about, the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we see from there, Shmamina Erchapayim Ra. Moshe saw the midah of God extends his anger, and that's the most firmest in his mind. Says the Gemara, a very interesting thing. Amar Rabbi Loza, Amar Rabbi Chanina. I love this. Asar HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyais atar b'rosh kol tzaddik v'tzaddik. God Himself is going to be a crown on every tzaddik. Shenema bayom bayom hu yeh Hashem tzvokos la'teret tzvi ulsferes tiferes l'shar amai. I mean, a tzaddik is somebody not just does the Torah mitzvahs. That's easy. I mean, that's of course not so easy. But what it means is that sometimes God has a ratzon that you need to do. Well, let's say you're taking care of a sick child, or a sick parent, or you'd rather be doing other things. But the ratzon Hashem puts you over here. So God will be a crown on these tzaddikim that follow and His will, and they do His will under all circumstances, and hope for His. It's just not that you're not doing it with a sadness, but you're also hoping for His salvation. So tzvi is the word, God's will. Litziferes means hoping for. So God will be a crown on every tzaddik, l'oisim ritzoynoi, those that do ritzoynoi, that do His will, umitzapin, and so that means whatever God has in mind for you to serve Him, that's what you're going to do. Umitzapin l'shiyosai, and nevertheless he's hoping for the salvation of God, that God will put him where He wants to be. Yochel akol, so maybe every person who's this way, God will be a crown on his head. Talmud loyma l'sheir amay. You need one more ingredient. If you make yourself like leftover crumbs, that if you don't feel self-important. So if you don't feel self-important and you do the Ratzon Hashem and you hope God will give you a salvation, then in the future God will be a crown on your head, and it's an unbelievable statement. Now the pasuk continues. L'ruach mishpat l'yoshev l'ruach mishpat al gvura meshivi mechama shara. The pasuk continues. L'ruach mishpat zeh haroida es yitzray. For somebody that overcomes his evil inclination. L'yoshev al mishpat zeh adon din emes lamite. For a judge that judges correctly. and he pays attention to his instincts to see if people are really telling the truth. V'legvura zehamasgaber b'yitzra. He overpowers his Yetzer Hara by doing a mitzvah. Sometimes your Yetzer Hara, you could overpower your Yetzer Hara, don't do bad, but you can overpower your Yetzer Hara by doing good. That's called gevura. Meshive mechama zeh shenoisim noisim mechamter shel Torah. Those that arguing back and forth in the war of Torah, and Sha'ara means those that get up early and go to shul and go to a place of learning. So all these things, I guess, are included in the pasuk that God will be a crown on their head. But the first one is Says the Gemara, what's the difference between these two? Some judges are destined for Gehenna. Why? Because they're arrogant and they drink wine, and that causes them to be lightheaded and not take their job seriously. So therefore, they're destined for Gehenna. But the other pasuk is dealing with a dayan that's serious about his job, trying to get to the bottom truth, the 100% whole truth. Okay, let's do the Mishnah, another 2.5 more minutes, and we'll do the Mishnah, and then we'll stop. We learned that in the Chumash that says that if most of a city does avodah zarah, that you're supposed to take a sayef and kill every member of the city with a sword, the misa sayef, and their entire possessions of the city are burned. Now, a regular person that does skila, if one person does skila on his does avodah zarah on his own, he gets skila, which is a more worse of an avera, which is a more worse of a punishment. So we'll see more about that in the Mishnah. But Anshe Ir Nadachas, a city that is subverted. Ein lehem chelik al bal. Shnema. How does a city get subverted to do avodah zarah? Because the pasuk says Yatzu Nashim Bnei Beli Baal, people who have no responsibility. Vayadichus Anshe Yoshu Iram. They got up and they made an announcement, and they were town criers and convincing everybody in the town, in the city, to do avodah zarah. So then we give misa sayef to these people in the city. So the people doing the subverting, convincing people to do avodah zarah, have to be men, and most of the city has to follow what they are saying, and they have to be from that shevet. And the people that doing the subverting has to be people who live there, not that just came here and stayed there for a night and convinced the whole city to do avodah zarah. Okay, now hidichu nashim uketanim oishuhudach biuta oishamediche chutzala harei. So let's say if women and small children were the subverters, they're the ones that are making the announcement to do avodah zarah. Or only if a minority of the city did avodah zarah, or if the people who are doing the subverting were not residents of the city, they're outsiders, guests. So then the city that did avodah zarah, you have to judge each person like an individual that did avodah zarah. Again, an individual that does avodah zarah gets skila. Each one of the subverters, there has to be two subverters, two guys convincing the city to do avodah zarah, and each one of them needs witnesses and warning, and they get punished with skila. The subverters, the one that did the convincing. I want to point out to you that the guys that are doing the convincing don't necessarily have to be the ones also doing avodah zarah. Even if they don't do avodah zarah, just the fact that they're going out convincing other people to do avodah zarah, they get a skila. But the people, if the most of the city did the avodah zarah, they get sayim. If many people do avodah zarah, and then a majority does avodah zarah, it's a difference. Individual that does avodah zarah gets skila. Therefore, his money is saved. But if many people do avodah zarah, they get sayef, the knife. We have to destroy their money. As I explained, all the possessions of the city are burned down. You kill them out by the sword. Let's say you have visitors that stay there, like camel driver, caravan people who stayed there for more than 30 days. So they could save the city, because if they join the part of the city that they become residents of the city, even though they plan on leaving the city, if they're there for 30 days. And therefore, if they don't do the Avodah Zarah, and now the majority did not do Avodah Zarah, they can save the entire city. From here we say, again, most of the city did Avodah Zarah, but what about the people that did not do Avodah Zarah? The possessions of the people that did not do Avodah Zarah, once they're part of that city, are lost. But if they have possessions outside the city, plating, they get saved. But those people in the city that did Avodah Zarah, whether their possessions are in the city or out of the city, they're destroyed. There should be loss. Continues the Mishnah. You have to bring and destroy all the possessions of the city in the middle of the street. If they don't have like a main street, you have to make a new main street. In other words, you have to burn everything in the city. Now, the Torah requires that all the possessions of the city should be burned in the city. And if it doesn't have a main street in the city, you got to make one. But only possessions that belong to the people, not possessions that belong to heaven. From here we see, if a person had something belong to the base of Migdash, or Trumas Yirkavu, they should be redeemed. Trumas Yirkavu, Trumas should be destroyed. Ma'aseh the Kisvei Kodesh, let's say a Sefer Torah or Ma'aseh Sheni, Yigonzu, they should hit it. So you only burn personal possessions. The Torah says burn it like you burn it completely. Amar Rab Shimon, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you burn, if you do you do din with a dir iran didachas, then Torah considers it as if you burned a carbon oila. Now, one final thing. The Torah tells you burn down the whole city, every house, everything. And what happens to the place? It should be a Tell, an English word. You can't even make it a public park. You can't rebuild the city. It could be a garden and an orchard. Nobody's not allowed to steal anything. You know, some people, they see possessions and we're all going to burn it, so he's going to come there and take a TV back home. He doesn't want it to see it burned. No, nobody's allowed to take anything from the things that are going to be destroyed. As soon as there are crooks in the city, in the world, God is angry at the whole world. But once we get rid of them, then there's no more anger in the world. So that's the pasuk says, and then there's no more going to be anger in the world. God won't be angry if everybody's going to be honest and not take anything that belonging to the Ir Nidachas. Okay, we'll stop over here.